Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured, why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description, to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say, I'm watching so-and-so show. And then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it. And that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here with another edition of One Mic's VOD, a third commission from one Brett Fuller, and he has commissioned the Netflix limited series Godless. So, like I said, this was commissioned by Brett Fuller. He commissioned also the previous two One Mic's VOD, which was Tales from the Loop and The Last Kingdom. Both were highly approved by me, 2 thumbs up. I think it's safe to say before I fully get into it that Brett has improved his record to 3-0, and this might be my favorite of the three. Actually, I think this is my favorite of the 3 things he's commissioned so far. I implore you, if you are at the I think it's the $10. I don't even know which one. Whichever Patreon one allows you to make requests. I think actually the 5 and 10 allow this. But whatever the case may be, if you are there and you're not using it, I mean, come on. And I'm enjoying it. Brett can recommend shit to me as long as he likes it. I will fucking watch it, because at this point he's getting better and better with his recommendations. But let's get to talking about Godless. Released in 2017 to Netflix. It's pretty surprising that Godless flew under my radar. The people involved in this, from cast to crew, are pretty insane. And Godless got some pretty fucking serious acclaim in the limited series category at the Emmys as well, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. But let's start with who's involved with this. So it's a 7-episode limited series created, written, executive produced, and directed. Yes, all of that by one Scott Frank. Now, let's give Scott Frank his flowers real quick, shall we? So Scott Frank has written, among other films, Minority Report, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. And my favorite movie, I want to say it was 2002 when that came out. Or was it 2012? I think it's 2002. One of my all-time favorite movies, as well as 2017's Logan, which means that he had a great 2017, having written that, and then also having written, executive produced, created, and directed this. But on TV, after creating, writing, executive producing, and directing this series, he went on to follow this up 3 years later in 2020 by creating, writing, executive producing, and directing The Queen's Gambit, which was I want to say, it was either my number 1 or number 2 show of 2020. Again, it was either that or I May Destroy You, which was on HBO. One of those held the number 1 spot and the other one took it. I think I May Destroy You held the number 1 spot. Queen's Gambit took it. Either way, 1 or 2, my first or second favorite show of 2020. And if I was doing this in 2017, Godless probably would have, I don't know if it would have taken that spot, because I would imagine in 2017 Game of Thrones might have been doing okay. I don't know. I can't recall. It seems like we've lost a lot of time with the pandemic. But yeah, I don't know. 2017, this show would have made a run as well. But for those of you like me who immediately became a Scott Frank fan upon hearing that resume, you're not alone. You're not alone. I'm sorry. So did I. But now for the accolades. So let's talk about the accolades this show got. Listen to these nominations real quick. I'm just going to read you these. Outstanding Limited Series. Lead Actress in a Limited Series. Supporting Actress in a Limited Series, which Merritt Wever won that award. A Supporting Actor in a Limited Series. Jeff Daniels won that award. Directing, writing, casting, cinematography, hairstyling, music composition, sound editing, outstanding original main title theme music, which it also won that one, which the bar, there was probably not a lot of high quality main title theme music in 2017 like there is today. There was probably a lot less stuff. Like, I was skipping the music. I acknowledge it was solid, but it wasn't one of those things where I'm like, oh yeah, I need to hear this every week, or every episode, I should say. But I can see how it won. Now, let me just say, I never saw American Crime Story, the assassination of Gianni Versace, but I can't imagine I live in a world where that show was better than this one. Like, I just can't. But that's what beat Godless for Outstanding Limited Series. And Ryan Murphy beat Scott Frank for directing. And what is life? I have no idea. But again, I feel like sometimes I am pretty hard on Ryan Murphy. I thought the Dahmer thing was pretty good. And the American Crime Story stuff has been solid. I haven't seen the Gianni Versace one, but even the OJ one, it's not even in the same. Like, to me, I wouldn't even put that in the same caliber of television show as this. The OJ one. Like I said, the Gianni Versace one, maybe it is. But that's the one that starred Travolta. I don't know, man. But, like, I wouldn't even put those in the same category of quality. Like, I would look at, like, the OJ one. Like, that's a winning caliber limited series when you don't have something like this. When you have something like this, the OJ don't win. And I'm surprised Versace won. But again, I didn't see it, so maybe you guys tell me it was that shit. But I highly doubt it. Anyway, let's talk about this show in non-spoilery fashion, of course. And in case it's not obvious, I thought the show was really fucking good, man. Like, every few years, someone tries to bring back westerns. It was a big deal back when television and film was in black and white, and when Clint Eastwood kind of came along and brought it to relevance as a young man, as an actor. And then Unforgiven, he came back as a director and kind of injected some life, I should say, into the genre when it was released in the 90s. But I don't think any TV show, and really none of the films that have attempted this since Unforgiven, I don't think have been able to replicate that success. And it's kind of a shame. You know, I'm surprised that this show didn't do it, because aside from dragging a bit in the middle, like, I feel like this could have been a tighter 5 episodes. This was really fucking good, man. And I mean, like, really high level work from top to bottom. Like, this is the thing you watch, you're like, this is gonna win all the Emmys. Like, when I watch, like, Chernobyl. Like, when you watch Chernobyl, you're like, okay, this is... nothing else is being put out that is of this quality. And you knew it the moment you watched Chernobyl. And when Chernobyl racked up all the Emmys, it was not a surprise. That's how I would have felt about this had I seen it in 2017. I'd be like, this is the Emmy show right here. This is gonna get it all. But surprisingly, it hasn't really brought the Western back. But it could have. Like, you could have used this. Like, you can't do multiple seasons of this specific story with these specific characters. That's generally how Westerns work. Like, no, like, you don't really, like, have characters live to the end and then they do another season or something like that. But, like, you could do this kind of like an anthology, right? With a new story and a new cast, but just bring the same level of quality to it. Like Netflix didn't decide to go the route of, like, giving Scott Frank a fuck ton of money and, like, hey, give us a new Godless season every couple years. But, like, they clearly like working with him, because they they brought him in for Queen's Gambit, and look, he made a show so fucking good it made chess cool. So, like, I don't know why Netflix hasn't asked for more Godless, but I would be all the way the fuck in on a Godless anthology series that Scott Frank makes, because this show was that fucking good. And, like, I wouldn't want it if Scott Frank didn't make it, because part of what made this show special, it wasn't just a compelling story. It wasn't just the characters and what we learn about them and their past and the bonds that they form with one another and what we learn about their relationships and how that drives the narrative and the big emotional moments toward the end. It wasn't even just, it's like the direction, the camera work, the cinematography, and the lighting, like everything comes together in this show. Everything. But so I have my notes. So what was so great about it? Like I haven't already talked about it, but let's start with setting up the premise and the stakes, and then I'll talk about some of those other things that I just kind of rattled them off right there. But so Frank Griffin, played by Jeff Daniels. He's a hotshot outlaw, big reputation. You see that in every Western, right? Who has a falling out with his, I'll call it adoptive son, although that obviously wasn't adoption back then, but his adoptive son, Roy Good, who was played by Jack O'Connell. And side note here, Jack O'Connell was absolutely robbed of an Emmy nomination that he was equally deserving of getting as his castmates. Like he's the only lead, like you notice when I read them, lead actor in the limited series, the only one I didn't read a nomination for. That was Jack O'Connell, I think, or maybe they was just like, oh well, he's not really the lead either, because it is kind of sketchy to see like who's like, I don't know, who's the lead of the show. It kind of feels like Jack O'Connell's character and Jeff Daniels' character kind of like co-leads. Scoop McNairy too, like it's kind of hard to figure one out. But like for Jack O'Connell and Scoop McNairy to not get nominated, I don't think there's a case to be made that Jeff Daniels and Merritt Weaver were better than them. Period. Much less better than them to the point where they should not only get nominations, they should get nominations and win. Like no way. Like there's no way they're good enough to win. And Jack O'Connell and Scoop McNairy weren't even good enough to get nominated. That's not even a reality that we live in. So those two got robbed. Sorry, but where was I? Okay, yeah. I said Frank and Roy had this falling out. Like, so I don't know whose decision it was for like I said, Jack to be the only one not nominated, but shame on them. Him and McNairy were great, but I gotta stop getting distracted by that. So Roy and Frank have a falling out, like I said, that results in Roy robbing Frank and shooting him in the arm, an arm that ultimately ends up needing to be amputated. Not a spoiler, this happens at the very, very beginning of the first episode. Roy ultimately ends up in a town called LaBelle, which is almost entirely populated by women, after a mining accident has killed virtually all of the men. They were all in the mine, it blew up, all the men gone. Essentially, the show fills in the backstory of Roy and Frank's past. It introduces us to present day LaBelle and kind of like and that world building of like how does this town operate, being mostly populated by women, and then it sets up the inevitable showdown between Frank and his crew and Roy and the people of LaBelle. So what else does this show do great? Well, everything. Like I said, it's great from top to bottom. It creates and introduces us to a unique world in the West. Because I mean, how often do you see a town that's populated by women? But it's almost entirely populated by women, but it has a male sheriff that none of the women respect, played by the aforementioned Scoop McNairy, and also a young male deputy played by Thomas Brody Sangster, who he played Jojen on Game of Thrones. And in this, he looks exactly the same as he did on The Queen's Gambit, like a little boy. They're dressed up as an adult cowboy for Halloween. That's what he looks like. But like I said, a world where the town is almost entirely populated by women. The sheriff and the deputy are both men, but the sheriff, the women don't, like, they call him a coward to his face. Like, that's how little the women respect him. So, what is that world, right? A world in the old West where the women kind of run the show and don't respect the male sheriff. So, like interesting shit like that. And so the world building there is compelling as they introduce us to it, and then they expand on it. Like I said, where are all the men? Why are there only a couple left? Why didn't they die? Why don't the women respect the sheriff? Like, all that kind of shit. World building, right? And things that interest you and move and keep you engaged from episode to episode. The handful of characters they chose to focus on when examining LaBelle are interesting as well. In addition to the aforementioned sheriff and deputy, Merritt Weaver plays the sheriff's sister, who appears to be the true sheriff that everyone in the town actually respects. She also carries on a secret relationship that spins off into an interesting plot thread as well. All of these interesting plot threads, too, that I might mention some as we come and go as I move through this review, but they all pan out, too. They all pay off. And I'm going to talk about one specifically in a little bit, but we meet their newspaper editor, the school teacher, and a myriad of other interesting people, including a woman named Alice, played by Michelle Dockery, one of the other Emmy nominees. Her character lives outside of LaBelle because the women of LaBelle don't like her due to some, we'll say, relationship choices that they don't particularly care for. And then the result, and then it's not so much that they care about the relationship choice, but they care about what they perceive the result of that choice to be. It's Alice who has the initial run-in with Roy Good that sort of propels the series forward, and there are just a number of there's like a number of beautiful moments that kind of spawn from this relationship as well. And I don't want to spoil the impact of some of these moments because I think some of them are really good, really beautiful. But what I will spoil about them is that the show allows Roy and Alice to form a bond that is it's not, when I say these special moments, I'm not talking about like, oh, here are two attractive people, let's have them fuck, because that's what people like to see. Like, no, like true emotional connecting moments between people like that they gotta build up to. Like, he doesn't just show up and it's like, oh, this guy's hot and I'm automatically kind of attracted to him. Like, they build up. I'm not gonna say that they don't develop a relationship, because of course that's what's gonna happen through the course of a TV show. You're gonna get that kind of thing, especially given this story. But like, they don't just make it like hey, we're around each other and we're both hot. Like, they build up a really substantial relationship between these two people, but Alice's son, who is there as well. So like, it's just really good character work, really earned moments, and it doesn't feel like a shoehorned romantic relationship to result in a sex scene between two attractive people. It feels like they wanted to build an actual relationship between two three-dimensional characters and have it pay off in ways that are more impactful and substantial and emotionally connective than just watching hot people fuck. But I will spoil this. Roy tends to the horses at Alice's home, and every scene involving Roy and a horse is absolutely beautiful. And I don't go where your mind is trying to go. It's not like that. I said that my one nitpick about this show is how it kind of dragged a bit in the middle. Well, these scenes with Roy and these horses will probably drag to most people as well, but I thought they were absolutely beautiful scenes, and I appreciated the amount of time the show spent on them and the time they made us spend with them. They took their time with those scenes, and I never thought to look at my watch once. Like, these are really beautiful scenes to watch, really captivating, really compelling. I get to the end of those scenes, and I'm like, that felt like a really long scene, but in a good way, where I just felt like I was watching something beautiful and didn't think like, this is dragging or this is taking too long. What's the point of this? I was just really engaged with what I was seeing, and that takes, given what was actually happening in these scenes, it takes some pretty special creative work to make those scenes engaging, because I feel like a lot of other shows, I'd have been like, what the fuck is this? A great example of this, though, is how Alice has horses that Roy needs to break in. And when I say, let me rewind briefly. When I said that the show dragged at times, even the scenes that seemed kind of slow and inconsequential, like some of these scenes, like these horse breaking in scenes with Roy, everything, no matter how seemingly irrelevant, mattered later. And the great example that I want to talk about is you know, Alice has these horses that Roy needs to break in, and this is a part of the great Roy / horse scenes that I'm talking about. But they intend to sell these horses to the women of LaBelle, and that feels and sounds pretty boring and inconsequential. But these horses end up pretty fucking important in the finale. So like, even scenes early on that kind of feel like, why am I watching this conversation? Like, maybe I don't need to hear this. You needed to hear it. Everything's intentional and purposeful. Lastly, I want to talk about the visuals on this show. I mean, my fucking God, man. There are some shots in this thing that, like, I'd want to make prints of them and hang them up, like, in my office or in my man cave. They're that amazing. Like, if you check out the One Mic Facebook page, I have 2 check-ins of me watching this show. And it's like a picture of it's a thing. You'd have to look at the feed. It says One Mic is watching Godless or whatever, and I do that, and I put comments while I'm watching it, just my thoughts. I did it twice. Once when I watched, I think I watched like 2 or 3 episodes in a run. I had that with comments in it, and then I did one. If you're watching this today, I did it last night while I was watching the finale. And in each of those, I put shots that popped up while I was watching that I thought were beautiful. Like, look at these shots, man. Like, the fact that this show lost for cinematography is mind-blowing. Like, I've seen very few shows ever that are even comparable to this one with some of the beautiful shots I saw in this shit, let alone better. Like, I mean, knocking my socks off with some of these shots. But I could talk about this show all day, but I'm just going to wrap up by saying this. Yet again, Brett Fuller has done it. Another absolute 2 thumbs up winner for me. And if you think you couldn't get into Westerns, I kind of implore you to give this show a shot. I dare you to watch this and think it's trash, because this is some great stuff. Scott Frank has a lifelong fan in me. I'll be here for whatever he does next. Big, strong recommendation from One Mic on Godless. And until next time, peace.